1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Rocco training arc video. Another Age of Sigmar video where we talk about me trying to be one of the top cities players again. Putting in all the stuff that I teach you all into practice and showing you it could work or doesn't. Maybe I'm full of it. I don't know. Let's find out. Because finally, all the nerfs happened. Everything is okay. The sky didn't fall. I've been on a couple different podcasts. I'll even put a link in below talking about cities got nerfed, and my build specifically got nerfed. But it's still a playable army. It's still really good. It's just not going to hard stomp people. Now you got to work to win games. And let's see what we did here for the 2024 tournament season. I was able to snag a seat to go and play at a very, very popular RTT destination in Maryland. And here we go. Went out to Tables and Towers. They call their RTTs different things, but it's a store that's actually in the middle of a mall in Westminster, Maryland, that has a huge hobby space. They also have like a GT hall across the hallway. And actually, when I showed up, because my first time there, I was expecting a game store, not a mall, and I'm staring at it. I'm like, oh crap, it's closed. And then my wife and I were like, oh yeah, it's whatever. And then I turned around, I'm like, oh wait a minute, they have a whole nother store, and very cool things. Hosted by the Knights of the Pond Gaming Club. They got a thing for ducks. Again, very nice, welcoming people. It was a 30-player event. Again, the gaming store was really cool. The tables were. It reminded me of a store in Pennsylvania that I used to go to called Gamers Heaven, where you could walk around the tables. Didn't hurt your back bending over to go to the tables. Every table had a chair you could sit in that was comfortable. We didn't even use half the gaming tables, and they also had room for Magic the Gathering. I'm pretty sure they had Gunpla stuff. They had all kinds of used minis, new minis, all different game systems, RPG stuff. Very cool store. And again, I brought out the cities list that you've all seen me play, where it's the Warforger, the 20 Fusiliers, the 2x10 of Steel Helms, the Wilder Corpse Hunters, Belthanos, the Pontifex, my elves. You know it, you love it. If you've been a fan of the channel, following me along. And also, a bunch of y'all have been using my advice and have been messaging me saying how good you've been doing. So let's see, is it true that those who can't do teach? Right now we are currently 5-0 with the list, but it's a whole new patch. If this was, any online game, a whole new thing. Let's see how we go here. All right, we also need to realize we got to set a reasonable goal, right? Because, listen, if I go in thinking I'm going to win the event with a nerfed list, I'm delusional. It is definitely worse than it was. Now we're in the testing phase to see, all right, where do I tweak? What do I do? I used to roll over Slaves to Darkness armies, Stormcast armies I could beat. I beat what are now considered the meta Skaven list. We've done some work, but we're not that list anymore. We don't have access to what amounted to, honestly, 10-ish extra mortal wounds every time my Fusilier shot, or at least every turn. Like, they could probably shoot twice because of return fire. So again, between 5 and 10 mortal wounds per turn, that adds up after a while. So does our strategy of how I've constructed the list, layers and layers of screens, work while we shoot everything off? I just want to win a game. All right, everything's scary. Everyone's saying, cities is nerfed into the ground, or specifically Fusiliers are. They're not worth their points. What do we do? Let's see if we can win a game. All right, follow me, camera guy. We won a game! We played Sylvaneth on Geomantic Pulse. My opponent, as you can see, took first turn. And I clawed my way back into this, and it was just a brutal slugfest of a game. I think the only thing left was my opponent's Branch Witch, and I was basically tabled. I might have had my Belthanos. He might have died. I don't even remember. It was just a slaughter. This is a picture of my deployment, my opponent's first turn, as they were moving up to tag objectives before the pulse came out. What ended up happening was when I went first that second battle round, I double turned my opponent early. I'll even say, because they moved after this picture's taken. On the left of the picture, my opponent's right flank, you can see Spite Rider Lancers. They actually move up to take an objective around those trees. Those were obscuring, but I was able to get an angle to shoot a bunch dead. And it only worked because I used the spell Pall of Doom from my wonderful Battle Mage with the extended range. It's such an amazing spell to stop your opponent from being able to issue or receive commands on a unit, because it functionally makes my Rend 1 guns matter. Because then their 4-up save becomes a 5-up save. It stops an all-out defense, which is just so helpful when everyone can still save stack. And, I mean, how it goes is they take first turn, they teleport Durthu in on an amazing long bomb charge, kill my Pontifex to the wound after she made a bunch of amazing saves, and I even almost bracketed Durthu on an Unleash Hell, which was very close to working to make that go from 6 damage a swing to D6. And, a Durthu should be able to one-shot the Pontifex. I was kind of hoping for the bugs on my left flank to kind of rush forward, because they're playing Heartwood. It was run and charge with their Belthanos. I could see what happened. But because I got the double turn, I actually was able to neutralize the unit of Lancers over 2 turns of shooting. So my Fusiliers, shooting and a little bit of help from Belthanos, my Fusiliers were able to actually earn their points back immediately. And because of return fire, they were able to function throughout the game, and their ability to ignore incoming Rendon shots was amazing for me. My opponent, when they went second, decided to make the pulse go on my right flank, and then it went all the way across the board, so close to where my head's floating. And while they scored points early, I was able to match them enough, and the pulse moved into the part of the board my army controlled, where, again, if their game plan worked, they would just push me out along with the pulse. There's also a bunch of Kurnoth Hunters with swords that you can't see because they're hidden in the trees. Can't see the Kurnoth through the trees. But yeah, my elves died a glorious death fighting Kurnoth Hunters, and it was a come-from-behind victory for me that I really thought I wasn't going to win this, and then my opponent did the math before I did it on the app for Goonhammer here, which again is the... I love this app so much. It really is helpful. The Tabletop Battles app, as I've done videos on. So, we ended up pulling one out, just squeaking it out at the end there, at the end of round 5. And then when I put in the score, I found out that they do point differential scoring. So my amazing come from behind win was a little blunted, but hey, we did it. The goal is achieved. The rest is smooth sailing. Cities isn't broken. That was everything from the beginning here just felt like, because the Pontifex went up in points, that we it sucks using her as a screen, because then you kind of feel bad. But the plus side is my Steel Helms were able to control objectives and actually get me ward saves that ended up mattering throughout the game. My elves did what they could. My shooting, again, they earned their points throughout this. They were able to kill the bugs. They killed off a bunch of Kurnoth. And my opponent because they had to struggle to get out. They could kill me all they wanted, but I was able to deny them their grand strategy because my Belthanos redeployed out of being charged by his branch witch, and he wouldn't have killed her, which is absolutely hysterical. Um, but yeah, no, it was a good time. So going into game two, uh, one thing about this venue is they do not have a lot of time between rounds, and the nearest bathroom is a 5 minute walk one way through the mall. So I was able to go to the bathroom. I grabbed a cup of pretzels from like an Auntie Anne's, Auntie Anne's, like little pretzel bites, and then I was already into my game two, and we had literally 5 rounds between 5 minutes. 5 minutes. We had literally 5 minutes between rounds two and three, which comes into play in a little bit. But let's focus on game two here, because we had to go right into it, and it is no reward without risk. So you may be saying, Rocco, why do you have a picture of your opponent's army and not a picture of the game? Which, as you can see, we lost. The game, because of the time, and they play at it's like a 2 hour 45 minute round, so you've got 15 minutes between the two of you to deploy your stuff and then play a full game in 2.5 hours instead of the usual 3 hour rounds. It's even faster, and Lord help me, there's so much stuff with cities interacting with my opponent that I didn't slow play and still used up all my time. But, like my half of the time, and then this happened. So, my opponent went first, no risk without reward. The whole point is you can, deploy up to your opponent's deployment zone because it's the corner deployments. And they outdropped me, and I could not deploy my important stuff outside of Curse of Years range for my opponent's Archon the Black. They also used the Manfred Army of Renown, Regiment of Renown, whatever it is. Manfred can take the Fellbats and the Graveguard and himself for 630 points, 635, and they can teleport. He took that. I think it's a Regiment of Renown. Yeah, Regiment of Renown to fit into an army. And it kind of goes to show you why Bone Reapers don't have allies normally anyway. It's a very good list. And I cannot compete with 2 Mortarks. That's also one big 4 block of the Morghast with the 5-up ward. Yeah, the Pontifex got Curse of Years off the tabletop of 1, and my elves took so much damage and eventually all died, but it was either my elves died, my Pontifex died to a spell, or the rest of my army was tabled because nothing else in my army could even try to survive it. And that's rough. But as you can see on the scoreboard, it ended up being a tie game. Going through 3 rounds there, up until that third round, I kept it close. The one problem that I ran into, because again, my opponent kept dropping battle tactics. I did the thing. I eventually ended the game on a very cinematic. It was just Belthanos surrounded by the dead, and they charged him and ate him like it was a zombie movie. And this person, Jonathan, actually ended up winning the tournament. So I don't feel bad about losing to this, in the sense that it was a rough battle plan. And because I don't have the mortal wounds, instead of lifting 2 2 Morghasts in a shooting phase, I was lifting 1. I killed Manfred. I killed a bunch of stuff. Even with the recursion of bringing Bone Reaper stuff back, I still did what I needed to do. It's just, unfortunately, because I don't have the mortal wounds, and, he got the Curse of Years off it twice, and it worked. Twice. But it was either kill Archon the Black, or kill Manfred, who was doing the same amount of damage, but in melee. I had to go Manfred because he was in my face, and I worked on the Morghast, and I was able to retreat and charge with Belthanos to do a lot of really cool stuff. And Paul of Doom, again, it worked. And I couldn't deploy out of range of his spells because of Arcane the Black's spell range increaser. It is what it is. You can't win every game when your army isn't broken. And it was, again, a very even game, even with how strong my opponent was. Things that I would change, again, because my opponent's stuff flew, too, with the Morghast, I wasn't able to hide. Even with how I screened out my stuff, protecting my shooting versus protecting the elves, I don't know. But if my opponent had given me first turn with how they deployed on the line, I would have just gone in with the spell on the elves. Maybe. Because, again, Archon the Black has a lot of pluses to cast at Unbind, and I just have an extra dice that I could throw as Hollow Heart, and maybe stab an elf for a +2. But it was a lot of denying magic on both sides, but the Curse of Years did keep going through. And it was a good game. No shame in losing. Then we get to game 3, where I found out that we had 5 minutes between rounds, and I'm pretty sure my opponent went to the bathroom, which again was 5 minutes one way, 5 minutes the other. But I thought I misheard, and my opponent thought he misheard. We both just thought we had time, so we kind of lollygagged through it. So I blame myself. And because I'm never going to blame someone for going to the bathroom. But, when we were able to reconvene, and I'm just like, okay, let's go. We talked through our lists. I played Stormcast a lot as Stormcast. And as you can see yet again, we have another extremely tight loss. So there's room for growth. But I'll tell you why it was a loss at the end. Because it's a little... I gotta explain it. Follow me here, camera guy. Alright, so we had 2 hours by the time we started to play our 5-round game, which we ended up having to talk out round 5, which is more the shame of it than anything, because we were doing very good for time, and then the problem was at the end of the game, I still had about 1,000 points of stuff, he still had about 600-700 points worth of stuff, and, it was enough points on the table that we probably really did. It could have been anyone's game, as you could see. But starting at turn 1, again, opponent went first, I went second. The Pontifex didn't immediately die. My opponent had Ionis Cryptborn in here with a bunch of Annihilators with shields, some Annihilators with hammers, Vanguard Hunters to teleport around, and my Command Corps, which up until this point really had only done okay. It scored me battle tactics. Yes, it did heal my wizards, but my Spy Master saved the rolls for this game to keep me in it. Because at one point I was down 9-1. And as you can see, that first round, I only scored 1 point. My opponent just kept going and winning. They won priority the whole time. I never got a double turn. If I had gotten a double turn, that would have switched it at any point in time and would have put me in the driver's seat because I kept it even. And I would go he'd deep strike something. I had an opportunity to do bring full arms to bear. My top of 1. I had Belthanos ready to go and charge and kill off a unit of 5 Vindictors. I'm like, cool, I could shoot like 3 dead. You know, I could go and make them always strike last, kill them. I've got ways I can send my elves in, have them retreat after combat. We'll make it work, score my battle tactic 1-2 more. We're good. Belthanos can either fight there or get a charge on his Lord Imperator, which would then stop all the deep striking shenanigans with the Annihilators that were waiting to come down, right? I got 23 wounds in, and my opponent made 21 armor saves. I killed a single Vindictor, and lost my battle tactic in the because I failed to even make them have always strikes last through suppressing fire, and also I needed to kill one more model with how I rolled, and I would have done it. So that was rough. But then Belthanos was, I'm like, okay, cool. So we're sacking our first turn. We only score 1 objective. Cool. Drop my battle tactic. It's whatever. I will bounce to go and kill his support pieces. And then Belthanos went around with Surround and Destroy in my turn, too, to snipe out long strikes and try to chase down my opponent's. The general was a Knight in Cannon with the Auto Unbind, who was just stopping me. They didn't even need the Auto Unbind, my opponent, Dan, because his Knight in Canter, she just kept rolling too hot to stop my spells and just sat on the Auto Unbind for Tenumbral Blades the whole game. I just never got it off. But I was able to score a bunch of battle tactics. And in the end, cause I ended up converting the guy to wanting a Belthanos, just because of how good he is outside of combat, all the plays that I could do. And with his ward save, I survived long strikes, right? I also had an interesting interaction where the once per game Stormcast command abilities, the holy commands that I usually take 2 myself. I do the run and charge, and I do the one where you bring back a unit of Redeemers. And he took the Redeemers one, and he took I believe it was the hero phase shooting on the unreinforced unit of the long strikes, which were just messing me up. But because my opponent actually had shooting, my Fusiliers were able to return fire this game. And it was absolutely brutal, where I would be able to have a unit that I put Paul of Doom on, because it lasts until my next hero phase, so they couldn't all out defense, and then I would just blow them away. And I was able to slowly pick off enough Stormcast to make them drop battle tactics, like Secure the Battlefield for round 5 was dropped because even through talking it out, he shot me, and I killed one of his units, so he didn't have 4 units left to do Secure the Battlefield. Reprisal was another thing where I ended up killing his general, and Belthanos lived because I got to go and shoot off the nearest Stormcast unit that could be a threat, and then it made it harder for the other ones to catch up. And Belthanos, at the end of the game, had 2 wounds left, kept healing every hero phase, was an absolute champ, and every time my opponent tried to do a once per game ability, my Command Corp stopped it. And the rule is it counts as being spent, and it counts as being issued, which is a really big feels bad, because I didn't even realize that. I'm like, oh, cool, I stopped it. And we're like, no, wait, I stopped it forever. And it just felt dirty doing that to another Stormcast player. But the thing is, that kept me in the game. And as much as anything else. And the Fusiliers, again, they were still 14 of them left at round 5. My Battle Mage, my Warforger, Belthanos on 2 wounds. My opponent had a Yndrasta alive, a unit of Hammer Annihilators, and a unit of 5 Vanguard Hunters. And it came down to round 5, where, again, as you can see, I'm making them drop battle tactics, making them do a bunch of stuff. honestly, the roll off decided it because it was the difference of can he table me or not, and honestly, he could have. He was close enough to shoot my Warforger and murder him, and then the Annihilators could have charged in as well. Belthanos would have been shot dead, probably. He'd been very good with staying alive. And if he had stayed alive, if we had time to actually roll out the dice, I would have done. Because as you can see, I was saving my Intimidate the Invaders for an easy round 5 battle tactic because I needed something. But I chose Mount the Charge because it was just such a great close game that we played in 2 hours. That we played it out and talked it out as if he died. So, and everyone on my side would have died because I didn't win the roll off. And here we are. You know, it happens. And yeah, lines of communication. We both did not do the command point, make things more expensive. Mostly because, well, I guess I didn't. Because I didn't need to. I kept forgetting to because my command core kept doing it anyway. I made, I think, every 4-up to stop him. And he just ran out of CP that way because he kept going first and not really generating more. And yeah, again, we brought it back from he was at going into my round 2 was 9-1 him to 18-17, which again, I played. Let's get into the. So what did we learn here? Yeah, I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but also I played on the back foot every game, not just because I went second, but because the army's damage is not as much as it was. But in general, the army is more survivable. Instead of casting with my Alchemite Warforger, I'm doing the +1 save aura. Though the army is in a weird spot where I think I want to go first to get my buffs up. But I would have to be able to do enough with my shooting and setting up counter charges and always strikes first with my elves to actually matter, you know? Which is just a different play style that I was doing. But the loss of mortal wound shooting is awful. It is absolutely awful. The army is nerfed very specifically for that. And the Fusiliers are still pointed at like 170 per 10 at the time of this video. So they really need to go down in points. But at the same time, I was able to earn my points back even into Morghast and Manfred. They still killed their points worth of stuff. They were honestly the only consistent thing for me the 3 games because I was not doing great on my... Well, it wasn't even I wasn't doing great on my ward saves and my armor saves for my Blackguard. It was more... They'd have to eat like 1,000 points of damage. And they did what they could. But it just wasn't enough to be a melee army to do that. Paul of Doom on a battle mage with the trinket to extend its range. It is an auto include for me with this kind of build, and I think it should be an auto include in general because it just messes up so many things. Like if I had run into a Catacross, I would have just thrown that on him, and then the army wide everything would have been gone. Can't issue or receive. Commands, it's amazing. The orders were good. The thing that I leaned on the most more was retreating the elves out, because I play a style of my elves hold a flank, and I don't always have other heroes around to support them like that. So doing the always strikes first and the counter charge with them can be a little rough, but that's okay. But with this, the thing is, because I'm missing the mortal wound output in melee, which also, by the way, the Pontifex, when she was able to get her, like the game 3, she did the mortal wounds. It actually killed a bunch of Vindictors and hurt Ionis a lot, which led to Ionis dying. I think she ended up doing 12 mortal wounds to everybody. Like, she maxed out. It worked. It was great. Uh, the only reason Ionis lived so long was he had a unit of Praetors protecting him. And they did their job, and they died horribly. It was great. But when it comes to this, I need mortal wound output to deal with these 2-up and 3-up save armies. 2-ups from the Shield Annihilators, 3-ups for most of the Stormcast and the OBR that was brought before me. Because my volume of shots from 20 of the Fusiliers doesn't matter when my opponent can just spike dice and stop my spells. I just need the, I don't have impact hits. I'm honestly thinking about allying the Stormcast Chariot that I own just to be able to, or even Evocators or something along those lines where I just get to do mortal wounds and not have to hunt down a box or two of Executioners, but you need something like that, and it's why we're seeing with Cities the melee builds with the Cavaliers are doing so good, because they can proc the Mortal Wound spell 6 to hit still, as well as if they countercharge, then they engage the foe, they get extra attacks, they get the extra rend from the countercharge, and they get to go in. So the human build still has teeth, and I still want ranged units to deal with opposing screens, and if I run into an Incarnate, I need to be able to pop it from range and de-level it a bit. If I run into a Croak, Fusiliers are still the way. They just need to be cheaper for what they do, because a unit of Dark Shards is 120 for 20 shots, 3s to hit, 4s to wound. If you have so many in the unit, you give yourself a +1 to hit. You make it a 3 to hit. They have no rend, but if you're just going for volume like what I'm doing, there's a cheaper way to do it. But that still doesn't help me with the 2-up saves. But yeah, everyone knows to kill the Pontifex because of all the online scariness. So they're going to kill her. And what does that leave you? Usually 400 to 500 points of an enemy army out of position because they killed the Pontifex. And then I have 1,800 points of an army to clap back. Every time the Pontifex died, I was able to trade out an equal to greater amount of points and start my comeback. I might not have had the score on the scoreboard equal, but trading damage-wise, I still was able to do what I needed to do. And also, Belthanos is amazing. He doesn't do the damage of the Smash Griffin, which is a Free Guild Marshal with the hammer. There's an artifact. It's some kind of a hammer that gives you an extra rend and extra damage. You take it with the Lance loadout on the Griffin. The long and short of it is you can make it so that he's only wounded on a 4-up, and he can spike and do 30 damage at like Rend 2 or Rend 3 or something ridiculous on the charge. But the ability to retreat and charge and always have my ward save up when, again, I went through the whole tournament without having a Pontifex. Because she kept dying top of 1. Except for the Stormcast game where then she ended up dying round 2. Yeah. Belthanos just does so much for me. And for this type of play style. A 3-up save and a 5-up ward with a profile of the Stonehorns melee is just... It's amazing. So Belthanos and my Battle Mage were definitely my MVPs of the tournament on the day. And and the command corps showing up game three made it close. Because I usually joke, and I'm honestly polite enough. A lot of people end up thinking I'm like being a jackass or playing mind games. Like, no, I'm cheering my opponent's good rolls and I'm doing all these things. But I kept saying, hey man, don't give me hope. Don't throw this game for me. I want to get my butt kicked fair and square, sir. And then just I kept finding ways back into the game. So there are legs here. It just plays slightly differently. And I'm a glutton for punishment. So, one of my viewer, a friend in one of the discords I'm in, you've heard me talk about him, Bobo. He is doing an online TTS GT that another friend of mine, known on the internet as Pask, he was on here. He talked, I believe it was Ogres. Uh, yeah, love him, and he's like a son to me. It's great. It's beautiful to see him flourish as a TO and playing AOS and all these different war games. Well, he put on an online GT, so it's like one game a week over 5 weeks. And I'm a glutton for punishment. So, bonus game, Zhaolin, because uh, okay, so I have a sister-in-law that's Cantonese, so this is like slightly, I'm used to the X being pronounced slightly differently, so please forgive me for mispronouncing your name. Um, and the 51% win rate Discord that I'm on to, great group of people there. That are, a lot of them are in the tournament. Marty is aka Pask, who's running the tournament. I got talked into doing this, the Butcher's GT. This is the Butcher's 4. What did he call it? He called it something silly. It is Butcher's 4, the Scuffed One. Which, alright, battle plan here is the Frigid Zephyr. Again, a very bad one for a shooting army. It is anti-shooting army. I brought a shooting army. My opponent brought 15 Varangard, 2 units of Spire Tyrants, a Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot, and then Be'lakor. And Knights of the Empty Throne for the 5-up rally, the run and charge on all of the Varangard. I was made to go first. I adjusted my castle. I held my 1, 2, and more. My Wilder Corpse Hunters did what they did, and they pregame moved so they could actually score me an objective with their very slow movement. Because of the Zephyr, they just couldn't see anything to shoot. When they got charged by a unit of 3 Varangard, they actually killed one on an Unleash Hell, which was nice, and then they died immediately. And they all had Fell Spears, so it was all wounding on 2s, neg 3 Ren, 2 damage on the charge with their lances there. And my opponent doubled me. My first turn, all my screens died. The Pontifex died, I think, to the wound, or maybe it was like 10 wounds, and I have 9. Like, it was close. The thing was, though, with the run and charge, he kept getting 6s to run. And I went from being very far away to he just barely made the charge. And was able to... I failed the counter charge roll on my elves. Because I did do this always strikes first counter charge combo. And, he positioned in a way that I needed a 11. Because of the, so like what you do with cavalry is, or just in general, is the first model that makes contact on the charge has to be within half an inch, and then the rest is just like movement to stay coherent or whatever. So he was able to set up so that just one model was like at the far end of a screen, so I couldn't get like a direct line to charge. And then I just didn't get the charge. And it happens, and then I got doubled. And then I still killed... Belthanos killed 2 Varangard himself. He was near some mystical terrain that he was able to get some ward saves off on. And then my elves still killed, and the command corps that countercharged my turn 2 killed 3 out of a unit of 6. And again, life was really good. I had a chance. He was in range for me to finally shoot him. The Zephyr did not stop. But if I took a turn to just, shoot my opponent, kill him with magic, I had a shot. Belthanos died horribly in melee. So it was going to be rough, but if I got the turn, did enough damage, and double turned him back, he would run out of units. I'd win on primary. Unfortunately, I rolled a 14 to cast Blizzard because I made some changes to my list. My grand strategy went from Spellcasting Savant to Banners Held High. So I just needed a unit with a banner to live, and my opponent had no banners or totems in his army. So, again, life is good. Kill the Vanguard, I win the game. And I took Blizzard instead of Transmutation of Lead because, if he blows himself up or just dies horribly for mortal wound's sake, I'm not giving up Spellcasting Savant. What happened was I rolled a 14 to cast Blizzard, and my buddy Pask, Marty, he was watching me, and he's like, "Come on, Rocco, you could roll the second primal. You only have 1/1. What are the chances you roll a 1? Because it would have been enough where my opponent couldn't have stopped it if I had rolled like a 2 or a 3. And I rolled another 1. My wizard, my Warforger blew up, killed my sorceress, mostly killed my battle mage, and killed a bunch of Fusiliers who then were out of range of shooting, and I just forfeited. It was a rough battle plan, and dice weren't with me at the end. Again, they kept me through, but the game was over in an hour. And it was a lot of fun playing a gentleman from South Korea, which is really cool with GTS events. Again, rough matchup. Even without the... If I was pre-nerf, it wouldn't have worked anyway because I couldn't shoot him. Because the Zephyr's rule is you don't have visibility to an enemy unit unless they're within 12 inches of you. So I couldn't Paul of Doom anyone. I couldn't shoot them with my Fusiliers. And that was just the game. It happens, And then, for the sake of the tournament, he still maxed out his score. I think the final score is like 28-5. And I'm in the, I'm going to submarine. Which, yeah, it's alright. Again, winning 1 game in the RTT was the goal in this. I'm just trying to win 2. If we go 2 and 3 with this list, as is, maybe, 2-3 is the goal. 3-2 is the dream. 4 and 1 is just insane. And we got the bad battle plan out of the way, round 1. So, we'll see what I draw next. And it's a 70-person event. And actually, it's listed as being in Tennessee, so funnily enough, this might actually be an ITC event at the end of the day, which is really cool. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe, be nice, roll some dice. We'll catch you next time on my training arc. Let's see how we go. And on the plus side, I've got a bunch of Cavaliers I'm ready to paint up for my next list after this, if this one ends up being a dud. Which happens, and then this just goes to being for fun instead of my tournament list. But, we'll see. I've got hope. You better too. Bye, everybody.